Hey gang, welcome back. It's I, DrBossKey, and today we're going to talk about lasers because every shmup needs to have lasers. Okay, maybe not everyone, but everyone that I have enjoyed generally, because who doesn't want to shoot giant laser beams? Okay, so first off, lasers could be a little complicated. There are a few gotchas, and I really had to pull apart a bunch of studying of the components of how lasers are put together, and I'll jump into this and share with you. One of my favorite lasers of all time is from the Metal Slug series. They, not only is the pixel art, it's just some of the best pixel art on the planet, but they also have a wonderful attention to detail. All the pieces seem to work in a way that really just is aesthetically pleasing to me. So we have borrowed inspiration and started to build our own lasers with that in mind. So, okay, first off, some things you should know. Hop on over. I highly recommend you might want to set up things for yourself in a similar way. So I set up just a dummy enemy type here. So I call him or it the laser test enemy. And on this test enemy, I basically created, I don't know, 7-ish weapons. And in here, because it depends, if you only need one laser, that's one thing, but I really wanted to explore lasers and the different components to lasers. And for me, just like it's good advice across your game, say for instance, you have a boss and you want the boss to have a laser, and you have the player and you want the player to have a laser. Well, if you start changing the sizes of your dependent particles, the laser beam itself, and some of those elements are shared, so making tweaks in one space for like the boss can affect your weapons, your art assets for like your player, for instance. So breaking them apart, very important, because you never know when you need to go back and say you want to change the laser size to 10 or something like that, or you want to increase the resolution, the texture sheet of your laser to support a much bigger laser on screen, right? So you just keep that in mind. In some cases, it's important, especially as your game grows, to just be methodical about that. Okay, so in here you can already see I've got a couple different versions of lasers. Let me show you probably the most basic and very, very satisfying laser in itself. And I'll see about giving you guys a link to this as well. So inside of Shmup Creator, you'll notice that there is basically a laser element. And this is part of the sample pack. So one of the things that the Shmup Creator folks have done a great job with is they've really tried to replicate and really embody the different types of art styles to really get the weapons and the performance and everything to really feel like it belongs in a what you would consider a traditional shmup. So there's this one asset here. This asset is called the in this case the laser underscore ELEM underscore 01 PNG. So a couple things here that are important in this particular case. And because it's a bullet, bullets and particles in the Shmup Creator engine, if they do not have an alpha channel, and ideally you know what an alpha channel is. This is an alpha channel, just an empty channel. So you can put things on top of it, and that then has transparency. So if you don't have one of these, and you make sure you can save out your PNG without an alpha channel, and make sure that the back, so like let me see here. So for instance, here actually, I'm getting ahead of myself. How about I show you another one? This is a little easier to see. All right, so like for instance, all right, so here is a version of lasers that I have, and this has an alpha channel, so it's transparent, it's a PNG. So if you go in and you add, this is a little bit off the reservation, but it's important to know. So if you go in and you essentially create a new layer, so layer up here, in my case, or in your case, both of our cases, I guess, I just want to fill that entire alpha channel or that empty layer with the color black. And then I want to save it out. And I want to save it out without transparency. So, and lots of photo editing device software does this. So there's nothing extra entirely spectacular there. So the cool thing is that this then changes your bullet skin or your particles to additive, meaning that when you have the dark spots, and I may be not doing this justice, but the dark spots in your texture, the more of those that render on top of each other, better for particles, but the more that render on top of each other, the brighter they get. So it gives a lot of your bullets a much brighter look. And so you can see here, for instance, when we're looking at this, so you'll see here, see how bright this is? Well, it's bright because it doesn't have an alpha channel and it's additive blending in this case. So just keep that in mind. If you're looking for that extra bright hotness, that's one of the ways you get to it, right? So a little pro tip for you there. So the other thing that's important to know is at the most basic form. I mean, look at this little guy. Look at this little guy. It's a white beam. You've got basically it's got kind of a glowing blue that has basically a transparent fall off, right? That gets darker towards the edges. And then you have basically this crackling energy beam. Notice how it basically is aligned. And so one of the things that's important to know, at its most basic form, you can create a pretty cool looking laser effect. Use this, I'll make sure I'll link this here as well so you guys can have it. But you can use this as a basis for creating essentially your laser beam. So switch back to the engine and you take a look. I mean, take a look at that. That is this guy right here, right? And one of the reasons why is because the Shmup Creator engine essentially does a thing, it scrolls your texture. So not only is it drawing it, but it's animating the texture to essentially scroll and loop. So it's scrolling and looping. And that's what makes the outsides, that's what makes the outsides here, because it's essentially drawing and scrolling. It's basically scrolling through the texture. So it makes it look like these crackling beams are waving, right? So pretty cool. Mwah, super, super cool. All right. So the most basic form, that is a laser. You could use that and you would be pretty happy. So now, as you can tell, in my examples here, we went with a slightly more complex direction, right? But a lot of the principles are the same here. So I'll go and unpack how we can do these and I'll walk you through kind of how to set this up. So in the lasers that we used an animated sprite sheet for the beam itself and these elements. And I'll just walk you through what each of these elements are. To give you a sense, or for us, I wanted to really get a little bit more control over the animation and the undulation of the effect itself. And I also wanted the inside beam to grow and grow bigger and smaller. So I want to have this kind of pulsing side of this, right? Pulsing. And the way we achieve that is, let me see here. How about I go into the anatomy of the laser? All right, so take a look here. Number 3, I think. Also super fun. You can always turn off in your weapons editors, the view to make sure you're looking at the right one. Bloop. Laser red. Yeah, okay, cool. Perfect. All right. So the anatomy of a laser. So you have the skin. So in our case, P_B_laser is the one we're using in this particular case. And that's what I just showed you. You hook that up. You also have under your projectile types, you have essentially normal. So this is just straightforward, or you have plasma. Plasma is neat because it gives you a bendy laser. And so, I don't know. So to give you an example of that, so I've got the player lasers here. Actually, let me get this guy out of here. All right. So I have... I don't want to die. Bloop. All right. So I have this. So that's a bendy laser. This is a plasma laser. So it doesn't change anything in the way that you animate it. It's just an option. And then you can tweak things like that. But these also can be affected by gravity. So, and then here's an example of essentially these are straight lasers. I have like a triple laser. I just handled those individually, right? Okay. And to show you, so here's a good example. We've got the DrBossKey here. And the DrBossKey uses a plasma laser. And that's how we get this cool like bendy arc for that as well, right? So, we turned the lasers in our case because I wanted them to also act as like bullet buffers or walls. So you can see here when I'm shooting, they block my shots because I made the lasers themselves. I made them blah, 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 blah. I made them destructible. So when you shoot them, and the cool thing is the laser keeps shooting the way they're built in the engine. So unless your bullets have pass through, which some of mine do as well, or piercing, then they actually wind up blocking. So it kind of creates a little bit more gameplay from just using these effects. So, but again, I'm a little bit in the weeds here. So how about, so I've showed you that, we're good there. Why don't we get back into the anatomy of a laser? All right, cool. All right, so back here. So you've got the skin, laser red in this case is what I'm using. And here, laser red. Here, as I already talked about, I went with no transparency. So another thing that's really important to know, quick tip for you, is I believe you cannot have an animated sprite sheet that has columns and rows. So it either just be one row and not columns. So you don't want your sprite sheet to look like, you don't want it to basically be, you don't want to set it as 2 rows, so you just want 1 row. So for your sprite sheet itself. The other thing that's important to note that is probably super important is if you take a look at, let's see here, is it this? Is it this? Take a look. So many lasers, so little time. Okay, so we'll take a look at the, is it this one? Okay, so in this particular case, so the thing that you should know is all your lasers should be vertical too, right? So notice here, this is the laser we're looking at here. This is just a single beam in this case, and this is perfectly fine. This is me just trying a basic laser, right? So, but if I, for instance, took this and I tried to use a horizontal bar, then what would happen is this. This is a gotcha. This hits people all the time. So let's see here. What was that again? That was laser bar test, right? Laser bar test. Bloop. Notice up here, that's the laser we're looking at. And it will not render. So one of the things you want to do is make sure that you create the right orientation. Now, you could technically, I mean, there's nothing wrong with the way that is being done. It's just realize that the effect you're going to get is different when you're using a vertical or a horizontal texture as opposed to a vertical texture, right? All right. Cool. So I thought I'd share that with you. Okay, now back into the anatomy of lasers. So now you guys have that as well. Let's switch this back to, is there test reference? Was that it? No, that's a different one. Laser. Whatever, close enough. Okay. It's gonna bug me now. So I don't really need that one. It was PPE laser. That's what it was. The other thing I would highly recommend as we go through the elements of a laser. So one? Yeah, okay, cool. The anatomy, the elements of a laser is you want your naming convention to be something that you can follow. This is good for all of your assets because changing asset names later on is not easy. It's easy. You can remove the image and rename it, but that means that all the references to that, the gameplay references, the logic, all that, that means that you would have to go back and change those too. So you just wind up effectively doing work twice. So my pro tip for you is to make sure that you've named your lasers in a way that you can follow, right? So, to give you a good example of that, and this is back into the anatomy of the laser. Okay, so let's take this guy. So that was us with laser normal, plasma, laser skin. We talked about the options. So the other thing that's important is you need to get familiar with the particle system. So in our particular case, we have essentially, we want to be using for the particle system 01 is a particle system played when the bullet is fired. So in this case, we are using kind of this laser red start core. I've kind of gone back and forth with whether I want to use the start burst or the start core. It's a little different depending on the cases, but so let me just run you through that. So laser back over. So the laser bullet that goes into your bullets folder, right? So you got your models, you have bullets, So this is where the laser skin is. So you need that part of it, and you need then to hop over to your particles folder. And so here, you can tell if I take a look again at the red. So, let's see, and we're just looking at, we're at horizontal. So, I have the laser red start burst, laser red start core, laser red impact. And this will be kind of playing with the different parameters to see which ones I liked most between additive and normal. And all right, cool. So, and because I also have vertical lasers in the game, that meant that things like the end cap and the core start, those need to be rotated and adjusted. So, all right, so here we go. Let's close some of these. Don't need these, don't need this, don't need this anymore. All right, so don't need that. Okay. So in our case, we wanted to have essentially a burst. So this is a bursty burst fire for the laser red start burst. This is sort of like muzzle flash, right? So close this over here. You go over to your particle editor. Come on down to Laser Town. And so for instance, so I have start burst. And here you can basically see, and the thing is that in this particular case, what I did is I wanted to set max particles to 1, emission rate set to 1, because I just wanted to be, it's a flash burst, and the laser code will just continue drawing this particle effect. So there's no, you could create more particles, you could obviously customize and adjust it. This is just one of the ways that I wound up doing that. So I didn't want the angles to spread on emission direction or any of that. The particle itself is what we pointed out. It's animated, so that's a big part of where the animation comes from. You could do this with normal particles, little sprites. So there are all kinds of different ways to set this up, but that's just art-wise. It's one of the ways we did it. And then I set the animation duration as the particle life, and I set the life min-max to very small. I don't want these to linger around once the laser is done firing. Adjusted the size, and then on the modifiers, color over life, I just also want it to fade it out. So we start at 255 alpha and pure white, so we don't have any tinting on it. And then actually it should be, in this case, I just want it to wink out. So sometimes I set this to alpha as 0, so it will fade out instead. So that's the burst. So then you also want the start core, right? And you see the start core, same thing. I won't go back through the same settings here. It's either the same for each of the others. You want the laser red impact. So here's the impact. It went a little bit bigger in this case. Still kind of exploring this as well, but that gives you a sense for when the laser hits something, this is the impact that comes off of it. So here we did a little bit of art that gives it a bit more of this flavor to it. Like I said, I'm still kind of tweaking things on our side. I think the min-max life for that is actually a little high. It stays alive too long. And then let's see, so start burst. Oh, and then you need your end cap, right? So, and this is what goes on top of the laser itself. So same similar settings that I wound up using that we already covered. And if you come in to go back into the weapon in this case. So over here, you have your particle locator shot. So we use start core in this case. On the laser particle system, you have a start, so start burst. That's one of the things we're using there. So the start core for us is the circle element, and I can actually tweak and tune these a little bit more. And then you can also see that the start burst, this is essentially this bursty bit that you looked at. And then you have the laser start, or the laser red end. So you have the particle system at the laser end position, right? So, and so you can see it, let's see here, catch this. There we go. So this is the end cap. And you want to be a little bit bigger, more generous on this, right? So it probably caps off your laser. You need to fit a little bit to make sure it fits. But this is essentially the, this makes it to where you have artifacts when you draw the end of the laser. So this cleans up some of those artifacts too. And then here you can see you can see the essentially the impact, right? And I can flip an engine and show you that. So yeah, I think those are all the main things you need to know about lasers. There are other things, other parameters you can tweak and tune, but that's the gist of it. All right. Okay, I hope that's helpful. Thank you everybody that's been out there watching and following the channel, and for all the support and the play testing. Thank you to the Shmup creator community, a bunch of wonderful folks. It's great to find a bunch of people that are super passionate about Shmup development and the tool set, and the pace in which you can make Shmups with Shmup creator is fantastic. I just wanted to say very humbly, thank you very much. It matters. All right, we'll see you next time.